sec. Okay, we're recording now. Sorry, we'll start again. Chair Bodnar.
Present.
Vice Chair Duran.
Present.
Commissioner Merrick.
Present.
Thank you. Commissioner Ahi.
Here.
Commissioner Messenger.
Present.
Commissioner Roche.
Present.
And Commissioner Steinle. I see him, he's muted.
No, I'm unmuted. So
Okay. It looks like everybody is present.
Okay, I'm gonna propose again that if I'd like to move to have the election of the chair and vice chair move to the end of this meeting, and we can get into the other matters and circle back to this.
do you need a motion or do we just, if we?
Yeah,
don't-
I think I'm bringing the motion, so I could
Okay.
use
I'll
a
second
second.
it. I'll second it.
Okay, thank you, Eric. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Steve, do you need to take a roll call or?
I didn't hear any nays, so I think that's fine for that
Okay.
item.
All right, on our consent calendar, we've got the minutes from our last meeting. If you've all had an opportunity to review, I'll also entertain a motion on that.
So moved. Second.
Second, all right, all in favor of approving the minutes?
Aye.
Sorry,
Aye.
Aye.
one quick
Aye.
second. Who was the second?
It was
Susan.
Susan.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so that then brings us to the 376 First Street project for public hearing. So why don't we start with staff's report, please?
Okay, give me a sec. I'm doing like triple duty, so let me just get this set up. I'm gonna be on mute for 1 sec. And I'm using a new computer, so hopefully this works better than previous slideshows. I think I can share my screen and be on the camera at the same time now. 1 sec. Okay. Sorry. So can you see the screen now? I got a yes. Okay. So I apologize. I'm trying to get my screen situated so I can see it properly.
Just a quick question. Is it on record?
Yeah, we're recording now.
Okay, just checking. Thanks.
Okay, so this is a development proposal that includes design review and a subdivision tentative map application for a new multifamily residential building on a 0.2 acre site at 376 First Street. It has proposed to have 15 units. So just generally, I've showed this before to the commission, but just to remind you and the community, there are a number of projects on the that sort of South Main, San Antonio area in that triangle, and also a number of projects that are recently approved in construction or in the last previous years have been built. So this slide just shows a kind of representation of those. I apologize for any of those graphics or pictures that might be a little bit out of date. So the project before you is the 376 First Street, which is number 3, highlighted with the arrow. Oh, sorry. So just looking specifically at this parcel, This is a Google sort of 3D image of the parcel. Again, it's 0.2 acres in size. It includes a single-story restaurant. People might know it as Bella Vita. It's that restaurant or commercial building is approximately 3,500 square feet in area. There are 10 surface parking spaces. To the north or right of the subject property is a surface parking lot, a commercial building, which has the Draeger's Market. To the south or left side of the building is a 1-story structure in the front and a 2-story structure at the rear, which are administrative offices. And then across the street along First Street are mostly 1- and 2-story structures with a variety of personal services and administrative offices. That is the site where 355 First Street is being proposed and was before you a number of weeks ago. The sidewalk along the front of the parcel is just an asphalt walking surface. It's not considered consistent with the city sidewalk standard. So with this project, that will be replaced with a standard sidewalk. There's also no landscaping along the front. So with the project, you will get some landscaping with this project as required per the zoning code. There are 5 trees on the site that will be removed. Along the right side, you can kind of see that clump. Sorry, it's kind of blobby looking with this particular image, but there's 5 trees there. 2 of them are larger palm trees that are over 48 inches in circumference. They would be, or they are considered protected trees by the municipal code. There's also 6 trees to the rear of the property that are actually located in the Santa Clara County parcel, which is adjacent to the Foothill Expressway right-of-way, which you can't really see in this image because it just didn't get picked up very well. There are 6 trees located there. So this project has gone through a number of meetings already, and there are sure more to come. The Planning Commission did see this project as a study session August 1st, 2019. Some of you were on the commission then and recall the project. The applicant's architect might have some imagery from that time period as this project progressed. The application did come in on December 18th, 2019. So since it came in before January 1st of 2020, that date was when projects, if they were submitted after January 1st, 2020, they would be under the purview of SB 330. So this one came in prior to that. So it is not considered an SB 330 project. There are some provisions of SB 330 that are not in consideration with this project. One of those being like the 5 meeting limit that doesn't have the same, it's not applied to this project because it's not SB 330. This project did go to a separate meeting at the Complete Streets Commission. They did recommend the project at their meeting on December 1st, 2021. They did recommend some improvements to increase the amount of bicycle parking. To the applicant was amenable to including electric outlets in the bicycle parking for electrical charging of electric bikes, and so they did recommend approval at their meeting. It's before you tonight, and it'll go to the city council at a later date. Also to note, as some of you are aware, the city adopted objective design standards back in the September timeframe, became effective in October of 2021. This project, we did accept the plans prior to that date. So the objective standards, the newly adopted objective standards don't apply to this project as well, or shouldn't apply. So giving you kind of that historical perspective of this project. It is, as you can see with the dates, there's been some time that has passed. So just wanted to highlight those things. Moving on, this is the street level site plan kind of combination with the floor plan. Up on the top right are the existing proposed and either kind of the allowed or required requirements for, in particular for setbacks. Again, they're going to be demolishing the existing building, constructing 15 condominium units in a 4-story building. There's a common roof deck, which I think is the next slide, and underground parking. The driveway access will be in a similar location as the existing access to the property. Again, they'll be installing a standard sidewalk with that 1-foot easement along the frontage, which you've seen on, I think, all of the other projects on First Street to increase the sidewalk area. But to the south of this parcel, the sidewalk will remain a non-standard sidewalk, which is just an asphalt surface, and that potentially would be improved at a later date. At the street level, there is a bike rack installed towards the left front portion of the building, which is on the bottom portion of the slide. And that will provide 2 Class 2 parking spaces. Those are kind of daily use parking spaces for bicycles. With regards to the front yard, the ground story building, the building at the ground story is set back 11 feet to the front property line. And then you'll see in some further slides, the upper 2nd to 4th stories are set back at 8.4 feet. They are requesting a density bonus waiver for the reduced setback, which I'll cover a little bit later as well. The rear yard, the ground story setback is 12.2 feet at, again, at the ground level to the rear property line. And similar to the front yard, the upper stories are setbacks less, but it does meet the 10-foot rear yard setback. Landscaping along the front includes some trees and other landscaping. I think the applicant is going to kind of cover some of those details in their presentation. Again, there's no landscaping there right now, so it definitely will enhance the pedestrian environment. That being said, the landscaping is proposed to cover approximately 20% of the area, where 60% is required by code. The developer is requesting a development concession for that reduced landscape area as part of their density bonus request. So this is the lower parking garage area. They have 3 at-grade parking spaces and then 20 spaces that will be on a mechanical lift system. So for a total of 23 spaces. I've also included on this slide a table that represents the parking ratios per code, what they can request for the density bonus and what's required for density bonus. So 31 would be required per our parking code, but they're eligible to have that reduced parking at 19 spaces, and they're proposing 23. Also at the ground level is the bicycle parking enclosure, which in this version of the plan, which is what we had available for this meeting, accommodates 9 spaces. I'm told by the applicant they've already found some more space for more bicycle parking to address the Complete Streets Commission. The EV parking, they're proposing 3 EV parking spaces, but that will, I'm almost assured that is going to be increased because the REACH code that was adopted by the city will require additional EV chargers, and that will be reviewed further with the construction plans. Moving to the other end of the project at the very top level, the roof deck area, it is planned to be some active and passive spaces at the roof deck. You can see that in the kind of the center portion, it's accessed by an elevator. There's also 2 stairwells that access the roof deck area. The roof deck area includes some seating areas, one of which is covered by a pergola or trellis feature. There's a fire pit, a barbecue island, a jacuzzi, and again, some seating areas. It is kind of more central in the proposed to be more central in the rooftop area. It's surrounded by the mechanical equipment for the building and the proposed locations for the photovoltaic panels. There is, you can see on the elevation plans and kind of indicated here, I think there's, the wood screen wall, which is pointed out, which also surrounds the majority of the roof deck area to help with views and privacy, potential privacy impacts, and any sort of noise attenuation. Let's see, I think that's all I can cover on that slide. And by the way, I'm not covering every little detail in this. So I'm trying to give it as brief as possible with kind of covering all the bases. So moving on, with regards to the height, as many of you know, there are the city's building height definition is, I'll just kind of summarize it by saying we measure from the natural grade elevation all the way up to the top of the roof deck for a flat roof, and to the midpoint between the top plate and the ridge for a gable roof. So this is an interesting situation where you have kind of a mix of different roof features or structures. Where do you measure to? There's also a trellis feature on the top of the roof, which makes it a little bit more complex as well. We kind of use the most conservative measurement, or the topmost measurement, to determine the height of the quote unquote roof deck. And so we said 55.1 feet is the top of the roof deck. It's actually the top of the trellis. You can see on the slide where, excuse me, there's the other variations of roof deck height or building height shown there. Also, the top of the stair tower and top of the elevator override at 55.5 feet and 62.1 feet are shown there. And per the zoning code, they get up to a 12-foot exception for the stair tower and the elevator. The applicant did ask for a waiver for the additional height above the roof deck for the stair tower and elevator. It kind of depends on how you evaluate what is the top roof deck area. If taking staff's consideration of 55.1 feet, they don't really need that exception, or I should say that development waiver above 12 feet. But if you were to say that the top of the roof deck was actually 46.7 feet, then that particular requested waiver above the 12-foot limit for the stair tower and elevator would apply. Hopefully I didn't confuse you on that one, but it is a more complex design with looking at the building height definition. I won't touch a whole lot on the design because I think the developer's architect will really do that. But the previous design that the commission had seen with a study session had these two flanking gables to the front elevation and to the rear. That's what they have moved forward with in the design. The stair tower element along the left, there's that stair tower element along the left-hand side. which has kind of a darker color, exterior color there. And then the elevator element in the center, but both of those are step back from the front facade. As noted in the the agenda report, there are just a number of overlapping design guidelines and objectives for the downtown area, including the downtown design guidelines, downtown vision plan, which kind of talks about some future elements that we would like to see in the downtown, the CDR3 design controls, and then finally the design review findings, which the council has to make in approving the project. There was a peer review, an architectural peer review done for the project, similar to all the other downtown projects. And I think the applicant is going to kind of touch on that. The rear elevation, it's kind of a really mirroring the front elevation. This doesn't, it shows the trees in the rear that they're proposing, but it does not show the 5 Chinese pistache within the county parcel at the rear. The proposed wall, just kind of note that they did provide some column features, which breaks up the sort of monotonous wall plane, and it breaks up that wall into smaller sections. This is the north elevation, or a scene from Draeger's. They did spend a lot of time on the side elevations to address the fire department concerns with regards to getting access or egress to the bedroom locations. There are going to be some proposed, and you can kind of see it here, pads on the ground. And that will make it feasible for the proper access with ground ladders to the upper story bedroom locations. You can, yeah, so these balcony areas are recessed back into that wall plane. The south elevation, it's fairly similar to the north elevation, but it does have that stair tower in sort of that central area. Just to kind of point out also, you can see here where the top story, between the second and fourth story, it overhangs the first story, and so that's where at least the reduction in the front yard setback occurs. But it does provide some differentiates the first story from the upper stories, and it kind of reduces that vertical wall plane going up beyond sort of the pedestrian view. Okay, so I'll just kind of touch on the density bonuses that the developer is requesting. So with this project, it is in the CDR3 zoning district. There is no density in this, no defined density in the zoning district. So the applicant created a project, a theoretical base project that was included in the density bonus report, included in the agenda report. And that resulted in the project having 12 units. So the developer is proposing the 3 moderate rate income units, which is 25% of the units proposed. So that entitles the developer to a density bonus of 20% or 2.4 units. And with density bonus, we always round up. So we get a total of 15 units. And I'm hearing a little bit of feedback. Is anybody else hearing that? Let me just try to.
Yeah, I'm hearing the feedback. There's something I think.
So yeah, if you're not speaking, or maybe I should be the only one talking and unmuted. I don't hear it anymore, so I appreciate that. Okay, so that's the density bonus. Density bonus. Moving on to the density bonus concessions. So they're proposing 3 moderate rate units and therefore they're eligible for 2 concessions. And this is consistent with state law and implemented through the city's multifamily affordable housing ordinance. So again, 3 moderate rate units, which also satisfies our inclusionary affordable zoning code, which requires the developer to propose a majority of the units to be moderate. So they are asking for 2 concessions. One is an off menu. Actually, both of these are off menu. Sorry, I didn't include that with the second one, but the height concession to allow the height to be up to what staff considers to be the maximum building height of 55.1 feet, and a reduction to the 60% landscaping area in the front yard to reduce that to 20%. Moving on to the waivers that the developer is eligible for. So again, in addition to the 2 concessions, they are eligible to have unlimited concessions. Sorry, that should say unlimited waivers. I apologize. And that's per state law. So they're asking for 3 waivers. The first one is somewhat of a moot point, but they did request it. It's, again, I kind of touched on that, the elevator overrun to increase that beyond the 12 feet. They are asking for an encroachment into the 18 by 9 foot horizontal clearance and the 7 foot vertical clearance for parking spaces. We've applied this on other projects where they propose mechanical parking lifts. So that is a waiver they're requesting. That mechanical parking lift encroaches into this box area created by those dimensions. And the last waiver that they're requesting is the front yard setback of 8.4 feet where 10 feet is required. So that covers the density bonus. Just to touch on the fact that they are requesting a tentative map, there will be for 1 lot with a further subdivision with a condominium plan for the 15 residential units. And they'll be assigning the below grade parking spaces and other common areas through that condominium plan. We've included in the draft resolution the positive findings that can be made for the subdivision. It's in compliance with the general plan. It's physically suitable for this type and density of development, and other findings that have to be made for the subdivision approval. I did want to touch on the fact that the property well, let me just say, with regards to CEQA, or the California Environmental Quality Act, there is information in the agenda report showing that this project is eligible for what's called a Class 32 categorical exemption, or otherwise known as the infill exemption, urban infill exemption. There is a separate, not necessarily a CEQA issue per the CEQA guidelines, but there is a environmental issue with regards to the abutting property at 392 First Street. It's a former dry cleaners. It is the origin of some contamination, soil vapor contamination, which has been identified. That site has been brought into a voluntary local oversight program, which the County Department of Environmental Health is taking the lead on. And with this project, because they have done some soil testing and found elevated soil vapor contamination for some particular chemicals, we will condition this project to also seek local oversight, and that is a condition of approval in the proposed resolution. And that's what staff is recommending to address that issue. So I will just conclude with my presentation. We do recommend approval of the design review application and tentative map application per the findings and conditions in the draft resolution contained in the agenda report. I have a SketchUp model that I would need to load up. I think the applicant or their architect has as well, and they're available here to make their presentation. I can answer any questions that you might have, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I see Jolie raising her hand.
Yeah, this is, I mean, this could be left to the very end, but remember we do have, there's a typo in condition 31 about, so there's a slight change to condition 31, that language.
Yeah, if you can maybe bring that up. I forgot to
No, that's
to mention.
fine. Yeah.
Thank you
no.
very much.
And the other thing that I just, this project, does qualify for density bonus for concessions and waivers. And I know there were some questions about waivers and concessions. If there's any questions about that, staff or I can respond to that. The other thing that I wanted to remind the Planning Commission and the public as well, this project is subject to the Housing Accountability Act. So any conditions or any changes to design review can be recommended, but those changes or proposals cannot reduce the density or be used to be a recommendation for denial. So I know we've talked about this a lot, but just bear in mind this is a Housing Accountability Act project, and so I'm just leaving you with that.
Thank you. So I want to open it up for planning commissioners to ask questions of staff and of Jolie. And I think since we haven't dealt with, well, some of us haven't had as much experience with the concessions and waivers, I encourage you to ask the questions of Jolie about what our requirements are in terms of granting these concessions and waivers. So anyone want to start? Anyone have questions?
Yeah, I'll ask one actually, touching on the concession issue as one of the newer members of the commission. Just to make sure I understand it correctly, Jolie, concessions are granted to allow cost savings to make affordable housing affordable. Is that right? What is the justification for allowing a concession? I guess would be a better way to phrase it.
Well, it's the city's burden. It's no longer the applicant's. So the concession has to result in cost savings for affordable housing. And we ask for reasonable documentation. And so the developer has provided that in their density bonus report that was, I think, in Exhibit F.
Yeah, no, I saw it.
Yeah, and so we can no longer, and our denial of a concession would have to be based on substantial evidence that there is no cost savings for the provision of affordable housing. So the burden is really on the city at this point.
So let me pose a hypothetical to you. If there is a building asking for a concession on height and it has 12-foot ceilings on every floor, can we say to them, you know what, we're not going to grant that concession. You can bring it down to 10-foot ceilings.
If we don't have some sort of economic feasibility study that shows that 10 feet is actually would be a cost savings, but there is case law out there about 12-foot ceilings, and it did not go in favor of the city. So we've been through this before, and so if we're going to say we don't believe 12 feet is necessary for the provision of supplying affordable housing, we would need a study to show that. And at this point, we don't have a study.
Yeah,
But-
I'm struggling a
Sorry,
little bit with
yeah.
common sense, why 12 feet helps a project be more affordable than 10 foot, but okay, I understand the burden of proof is on the city. And similarly, an amenity like a rooftop garden or something like that falls under the same category?
No, I believe the amenity, they're seeking a waiver. And
But it goes to the height of the building, that's why I'm asking. Because if you didn't have a rooftop garden, you wouldn't have the trellis up there. And you wouldn't have to have the elevator go as high to provide access to it, I think, for ADA purposes.
well, if the developer has established that the waiver is necessary to construct the affordable units, then they shall get the waiver. The other thing is under certain case law, you cannot strip a project of its amenities to be able to deny a waiver. So we do have to be careful in what we're doing with amenities. So if the amenity is necessary for the project and they need a height waiver for that, I would be careful with how you condition that.
And the economic justification for amenities or higher ceilings would be you can sell those units, the market rate units for more money, and that helps offset the cost of the affordable units?
I would ask the developer that. That's their,
Okay.
yeah. And waivers do not have to go to affordability. Waivers are just that it's necessary for the physical construction of the
Right,
project.
understand that. Okay, thank you.
Can I just ask for clarification, Julie? You said like if we wanted to limit it to if we wanted it to get to 12 feet, or we'd have to have an economic study. But then you also said that there's case law that already establishes that that's reasonable and that cities have lost. So it doesn't feel like that's really something any study's gonna overcome existing case law.
Oh, I mean, no, there's the line of Walmart cases. And so for us to do something like try to justify lowering the ceiling height from 12 to 10 feet, we would need a study, and then it would be substantial evidence in the record to support our decision. So,
Got it. Okay, but we'd still be up against existing case law that would have denied that same argument. So.
Well, yeah, but they didn't have a study. So if we had a study, and I know years ago, the former council, I thought that they had tried to do a study or something, but anyway, it is,
Okay.
the applicant can.
Got it.
Yeah. Jolie, I have a question. So we talk about the elevator override being at 12 feet, but in fact, the elevator overrides are actually 14 feet. So what happens if the elevator gets built and the actual override space is 14 feet, so they have this additional 2 feet?
We're going to, if this gets recommended for approval, they would have the 12 feet. That would have to come back if it's going to be 14 feet. So I think that's something you should ask the developer or the architect about that, because I know we have had other projects in the past where they had to come back because there was a population of the elevator shaft. So I would ask the developer that question.
Okay, thank you.
Jolie, can you talk about the on-menu, off-menu concessions, since that's something that we have?
Well, we have the on menu, and then those you don't have to show that that they're just provided. I know that if they're off menu, they have to show that they are necessary for the financially for the cost savings for the project.
Mhm.
And so they have selected off menu. So they had to establish, they showed that they were necessary for the cost savings. So.
And also there's findings to deny the off menu, but the findings is that I want to say it's a health and safety.
Yeah, Yeah, we refer to those as sort of super findings, that the concession or incentive would have a specific adverse impact upon public health and safety or the physical environment, and that there's no feasible way to mitigate that, and without rendering the project infeasible. And that would all have to be based on substantial evidence in the record on actual existing standards and regulations in place at this time.
But if I read it correctly, it also includes that if it doesn't actually make it economically, doesn't affect the economics, that's another reason. But that sort of gets back to your study issue, but that is also a ground for denying it.
Yes.
Yes.
And it's our burden.
Right, I understand that. But
Yeah.
as simple as the on-menu concession, we've already agreed, it doesn't have that problem. The off-menu, there still is the question of whether it actually results in identifiable and actual cost savings supporting affordable housing.
Yes.
Which is basically a quote from this density bonus law.
Yes.
Yes? Okay.
Yes.
Yes, but sorry, let me, if I can interject, but they both off menu and on menu require that finding.
Right, but the on-menu, basically, we've conceded that point, is my understanding.
We've just conceded the point that those on menu, we've already said that those are not going to have any sort of
There's no objection to them.
Well, there's no health and safety. There's no adverse impact upon health and safety or to the physical environment. So we've already said the on menus, they don't.
Yes.
The off menus, you could request beyond the on menus, but it's kind of our burden to show that they have a diverse impact.
The on menu are sort of like a safe harbor.
Right.
You know? Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
that's a way some people can look at it.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
I had a couple. So I understand that the height and figuring out what the height is a little complicated with this, but for the elevator extension, is there anything that is saying that it's taken from the flat part of the roof? Because it seems odd that we would be taking it from the midpoint of the gable. So I'm just wondering where does it say that it has to be taken from this height number that we're figuring out?
Well, I think you first have to establish what is the
Mhm.
building height, and then they get the 12 feet above that.
Okay.
So that's where I think, in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, our building height definition doesn't address these types of designs where you have kind of mixed roof structures, and yeah, so it's just kind of difficult in how to interpret the variation of roof features at the top, and then, well, like you were just saying, well, where do you take the extension for the elevator or the stair overrun? But,
Okay.
so we try to do our best in the situation.
Okay. And then there was another project, 389 First Street, where it was a similar issue with the rooftop. And I was trying to look it up earlier today, but I'm not sure what ended up happening, because I know that the council had made the argument that that amenity was not necessary for basically for the housing portion of it. But I don't know what ended up happening, if they still were able to do it, or what because that's going to inform tonight's discussion, I would assume.
I'm Jolie can hop in, but I wouldn't say that sets a precedent at all. But I would say that what ended up happening on that project is the rooftop amenities stayed. The developer shaved literally inches off of the roof. Sorry, not the roof. The elevator overrun, and actually they kind of sank the elevator down and created a ramp to ramp up from the elevator to the height of the roof deck, and they somehow did it in the design. I would have to tell you that I've talked to the architect recently, and sorry, it's maybe tangential, but the construction of that has and design of that has created a lot of complexities
Yeah.
and probably additional costs. But
Okay.
that's
But basically the council trying to determine if that was really if that was something that we could allow or not allow. Basically, it didn't end up going that way. They ended up
correct.
doing it.
We've approved, and again, not to use other projects as precedents, but we have approved rooftop areas on other
Yeah.
projects, and case law, and Jolie can chime in, but I believe those case laws have come forward since the 389 project was approved. So
Okay.
just some of the history there.
Okay. And then one final question, the 60% landscape in the front yard. The staff report, I couldn't really tell if staff was basically saying that they would prefer to have that based on clearances and staging area, or if that was something that staff was okay with. I couldn't really grasp it from the staff report.
I'm not sure. Can you restate your question?
Basically, is there an issue that staff sees in terms of the staging or the utilities, or is it just that they're not meeting the 60%?
I think that there are, I mean, I think it's really challenging the way that our code is, the way that our code is written to get that. I mean, every project that we've seen now, none of them, I think, have been able to reach that 60%.
Yeah.
So it's like once you put the driveway, sorry, kids in the background. Once you get the driveway, other pedestrian features, utilities, the bicycle parking areas, all that other stuff, and the necessity to provide the 60% is very difficult. I just stated that.
Yeah.
Way. So I don't know if, I think on other projects they've squeezed every little space in there for landscaping, but on a practical note, that stuff can get trampled if there's not enough space for pedestrian access and all that. So it's just challenging. So like other projects, they're asking for, well, in this case, a concession, but other projects have asked for a waiver, and I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah. Okay. That was all I had.
I'm glad to see other kids in the room as well.
All right, any other questions? No, all right, so why don't we let the applicant present?
So the applicant, let me.
It should get 10 minutes if they want 10 minutes and a 5-minute rebuttal.
Yeah, so the applicant, Mr. Unlu, if you can unmute yourself and if you would like to turn on your camera. Also, I'm kind of looking for Brett Bailey. There he is. I saw Mr. Unlu. There, he's unmuted. So you have 10 minutes and I'll start it. You won't see it on the screen.
You can hear me still?
Yeah, we can hear you.
But I cannot put my video on. I don't know why.
Okay.
Doesn't let me.
Well, go ahead if you would like to say something or introduce Mr.
Sure.
Bailey.
I'm Ismail Jan Onlu. I bought this property in 1998. I've been resident of Los Altos for over 20 years, and also as serving the public as a restaurant more than 20 years. So I raised 2 of my kids here, happy to be here. And I've been finally patiently waiting the last 4 years about this project, try to give community something fit into this for community. And I'm still excited about it. So thank you for having me on. Pass to Brett Bailey if you have any question. The environmental issue came up earlier. If you guys, actually we're almost done with that. We have all the reports, but if you really need to, I can put on my environmental guy. He will be on if you guys need to, any question about him. So I'll let the Brett Bailey talk whatever you think.
I don't think we need to have the environmental done at this time because I think it's condition 9 is pretty clear about the condition, about what would need to be done unless there's specific questions. And I also want to note that this is a CEQA exemption, so this is not a mitigation measure. It will be a condition of approval, and I believe it's, if memory serves me, it's condition 9. So the applicant will have to comply with whatever, they'll have to comply with that before.
Okay, thank you. That's great.
All right, is Mr. Bailey, are you going to do a presentation on behalf of, like, an architect presentation of the project? Or is that
Yes.
okay.
Yes, you can hear me now?
We
Yeah.
can.
Excellent. All right.
Brett always struggles with the mic, so I got
For
him.
some reason, I don't know what it is. Now, hopefully I can share my screen here. It has been a while. I recognize some of you from the last hearing several years ago when we met in person. So it's good to see some of you again. And obviously the commission has changed a little bit since then. So I'm going to present mainly the things that have changed since the last time we met. It'll be a review for some of you, and then obviously it will be brand new for others. I want to make sure I am sharing. Hold on here.
Yeah, we can see the existing site condition.
Missing some icons for some reason. Hold on. What's going on? I'm trying to maximize this. This is Mr. Unlu's lovely restaurant, Bella Vita. I've eaten there a few times. If you haven't had a chance to eat there, I highly recommend it. Hold on here. Okay. Apologize, I'm having
I'll pause the clock for a second just so you can.
Okay, here we go. So the consensus of the comments that we received from the Planning Commission meeting we had last time was that although the massing and the material palette showed a lot of promise, the main entrance, which was originally located on the south side, was hidden from the street, and therefore it was not very welcoming. And so we have redesigned the project to create a welcoming entry facing First Street. We have maintained the same high quality building materials that we worked together on to create a very pleasant composition with the wood siding, metal panels that complement the smooth stucco in a 3-color palette, as you can see here. The composition of these materials breaks up the building into smaller pedestrian scale elements. And we've set off the entry with a blend of color and materials with a graceful stairway leading, a very wide stair leading to the main entry between the flanking pilasters. And then as you can see, the landscape planter walls. There's just a couple more views of the entry and the pedestrian scale of the entry. There's a contemporary awning structure that gives place for the building address numerals and welcomes guests and visitors to the front porch, and a deep main entry door for a strong shadow line. We also added some horizontal awnings above the entry to add some horizontality to the facade. And then a color break here on on the plaster wall above the entry to further accentuate the main entrance. It also ties into the stair tower beyond, which we lightened up at the recommendation of the peer review architect. Pedestrian amenities along First Street, as Steve mentioned, further accentuate the village character, including the bike rack, the bench, step planter areas, special decorative paving, and potted plants and flowers. Also provide screening for the resident on the first floor. We are also providing the additional 1-foot easement along First Street in an effort to improve the pedestrian experience along First Street. We'll have a 6-foot sidewalk plus the 6-inch curb. The garage is secured, as you can see here, with an aluminum roll-up door with translucent lights for a dramatic effect during evening hours and for added security along the First Street frontage. And also light fixtures also add character and variety to the facade without creating light pollution. We further refined the project to reflect the Los Altos village character by improving on many of the project details. And I would encourage you to look at your packet in more detail to see the careful details that we have created here to add additional interest to the facade. We strongly felt that the gabled forms and the natural wood siding should remain the signature form and the materials for the project. The mix of parapet walls and the gable roof forms are a traditional taste to a more modern urban structure, but they express the town character that is so important to the residents of Los Altos. Subtle changes to the window proportions have been made. Frame colors, we've added a deep, rich red color. It's called Chutney by Colby Colby. They're aluminum clad wood windows, very beautiful, very high detail. We've recessed the windows, introduced wood projecting elements on the wood siding bays. We've added wood sills underneath the windows on the plaster facades. We've implemented metal panels within the bay windows, as you can see here, to combine these two windows, have them read more as a two-story element to further break down the massing of the corner bays. One of the comments that we received previously was concerns that residents had or could potentially have with residents across the expressway. So we pulled some of the elements for the roof deck, the roof terrace. We pulled those away from the edge. We added additional landscaping on the edges. On the south side, we added solid walls for acoustical barrier. We added glass walls at the acoustical engineer's recommendations on the west facade to minimize potential sound migration from the expressway to the terrace and from the terrace to the neighbors. So here's another view of the further developed west facade. And we also produced a photo simulation of the project from the expressway showing the existing trees between the property and also showing all the trees, as Steve mentioned, that exist on the existing county land between Mr. Inlew's property and the expressway. So views of the building will be obscured quite considerably, as you can see in this image here, which was taken from the west side of the expressway. No external light sources, by the way, are planned on the west facade of the project. That was another concern that was raised. Since we last met, as Steve mentioned, we've spent considerable time and thought examining the building's side yard setbacks and working with the fire department to ensure that they have adequate access to the sleeping areas via their access ladders and from the ground floor. The egress windows are located on the north, east, and south facades. No sleeping rooms face the expressway. So balconies have been redesigned to provide adequate width for firefighters to attach their ladders, get on and off their ladders with full packs. The side yard widths have been increased here to a minimum of 7 feet wide. And as Steve mentioned, the rear setback is over 12 feet deep on the ground level. And then, of course, you have the county land fronting the expressway beyond that property line. So just to kind of show you some of the things that we discussed with the fire department, you can see in these views the ladder angles and how the fire department will gain access to the different sleeping rooms on the different sides of the building. So we created some ladder pads, also some platforms that the fire department requested so that they could get the ladders to the correct angle to the windows on all the sides. And also you can see here on the front facade, these are our bedroom windows here. So the nice, I guess, surprise from all of this, obviously increasing the side yards to 7 feet resulted in a significant increase to the landscape areas on the sides of the building and just the buffer between our property and the neighbors. Steve mentioned also, we're now providing the minimum secured bike parking that's required. Homeowners can always store their bikes within their unit if they desire. If you look at the unit plans in the packet, you'll see that generous storage areas are provided near the entries of most of the units. But we did provide additional parking for 12 bikes now, so we increased the size of this secured bike corral. So we now have 12 e-bike parking spaces for class 1 chargers, where 5 were required, 5 regular class 1. So
sorry to interrupt, Chair. 10 minutes is up. If you want to extend that, it's up to you.
Yeah, do you want to wrap it up in the next 2 minutes?
Yeah, let me just briefly touch on the peer review comments. So what you see on the left is the peer review suggestion for the front facade. There are some things that we did incorporate. We did lighten up the stair tower. We did deepen the recess, the windows further. We added more detail around the windows in lieu of adding the awnings. We looked at adding awnings to the building. It made the building feel very, very heavy and not as, it also, awnings encroached into the setback more and tended to darken the experience along the street. It also made the buildings feel like they were kind of tipping over and when you looked at it in perspective view. And so we respectfully disagreed on that particular point. It's also, frankly, a very common thing for architects, at least in the last decade, to add awnings everywhere on windows all the time. And this was something we didn't want to do on this particular project. We wanted the windows to express themselves more and leave these off. The other thing they recommended or suggested was to add horizontal siding in between the wood bays and to paint that siding a different color, which we felt was a little too much siding. We like the combination of the juxtaposition with the siding and the smooth trowel stucco. And then similarly on the other facade, they recommended a similar thing here. They said that this used to be a very dark gray color we lightened that up again to match what we're doing on the front facade, and ties this in quite nicely. And we felt that the siding of the entire tower was a little too heavy, so we kind of met in the middle on that one. And I think that's it. I did have a few more comments about the vehicle lift system waiver, but I can maybe touch on that a little bit later. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to invite the planning commissioners to ask questions of the applicant, if any.
I can start if you want.
Sure, go ahead, Eric.
Okay. I actually have a question for the applicant himself. It's a very simple question. What time does your restaurant open during the day? Is he there?
4:30.
Huh?
4:30.
That's every day?
Tuesday to Sunday.
Tuesday through Sunday at 4:30. So you're just open for dinner right now?
Right now, yes, because pandemic, yes.
Okay. If we didn't have the pandemic, would you still have just those hours?
Yes, sir, actually, yeah, yes, I'm working on that right now, actually.
Okay, so you're open for dinner only?
Right now, only, yes.
Right. No, but I guess my question is, if we didn't have the pandemic, because you used to be open earlier, right?
Yes, we couldn't be open lunch and dinner, yes.
Right. Okay. And so all things being equal, if we didn't have the pandemic, you still would be open for lunch and dinner?
Yes, sir.
Right. Okay. That answers my question. I have a question then for Mr. Bailey. I guess for Mr. Bailey, because it's a sort of a technical question. The proposal, your base, because I assume you came up with this at the request of the city, your base density unit, which was actually 11 units in 3 floors. Is that?
12, yes.
Huh?
It was, yeah, well, 12 units in 3 floors.
Okay, but right now the first 3 floors have 11 units, right? 3, 4, 4 in the current proposal, right? And you're adding a fourth floor to make it a total of 15.
Right.
Okay, and that comes to approximately 45, 46 feet, somewhere in there. Is that?
Correct.
Yeah.
If you count the top of the roof deck, you're correct.
Right. I mean, if you will, I'm going to use an inexact term because I'm not an architect, but to the top of, if you will, the building envelope, the part that contains the inside of the building. Does that make any sense to you as an architect? It probably doesn't, and so you'll.
No, the building envelope. If you're saying the building envelope is the top of the roof deck, of the flat roof deck.
Yeah.
That's correct.
Yeah. Okay. And that's sufficient space to build your 15 units. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
And I would like to add that we've been very sensitive to the height from the very beginning. We've tried to actually keep the structural roof deck. So if you look at the sections in the packet, we're at 45.5, I believe, or 45.7 to the top of the structural roof deck, which is on menu the extra 11 feet that you're allowed.
Right.
In order to do that, we've had to make all of the units on this project have 9-foot ceilings.
Okay.
Which is, you can argue that isn't today's standard. Most projects, I think, that are being proposed now have 10-foot ceilings.
Well, I'm sitting in one that has a 9-foot ceiling, so I find it perfectly adequate. I'll tell you that.
I'm an 8-foot, so. But by today's standards, downtown Los Altos, a lot are requesting, 10 feet. That's what 101st Street had. Yeah. And several of the other projects. We just felt that if we requested that extra 10, would that be acceptable to people? Would people, would the council and would the planning commission object to that? Because we're trying to conform with what the guidelines are in the municipal code and trying to stay on menu.
And I appreciate that. Okay. So I think those are my questions. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I have a question.
Anyone else have questions?
I have one.
Okay.
Can the architect tell me how the bikes are going to get from the basement to the street?
So the same way a car would. down the vehicle ramp. We've done that on other projects. You have to be careful because you have drains, trench drains at the bottom of the ramp. And so you just got to make sure that, you know, you design the right strip drains so that bikes' wheels don't get stuck in that. But they could also, if they opted to, it would be, you know, up to Mr. Unlu and how he writes his CC&Rs, but you could always take your elevator, take your bike up the elevator and go out the lobby and then down the ramp on the front of the building if you wanted to do that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else have questions?
Actually, I have a couple more. I have a couple more if I
Go
can.
ahead, Eric.
Okay. And again, this is for Mr. Bailey, I think. Number one, there was some concern in the peer review report about privacy for the ground floor front unit because there's that ramp that goes in front.
Yeah.
You didn't talk about that. Did you address any of those concerns, or
Yeah, I
anything
apologize.
changed?
I meant to mention that we are showing obscured glass on the lower portion, which is what the peer review architect had recommended. If you may have noticed that in some of the renderings. However, we talked a lot about that internally and felt that, you know, as a resident, I don't know if I would necessarily want that. I think we might want to keep the option open for just the use of blinds or a bottom-up shade. So if they do want to keep that open, they could and have the clear view out, because the finished floor is actually 30 inches above the sidewalk.
Mhm.
And you know, surely the way it was represented in the peer review comments, you know, were legitimate. I mean, a person walking up the ramp has a nice clear view right into those windows. However, how frequently would that be happening is kind of the question. And if it did bother that resident, they could close their blinds. And so we kind of wanted to keep that open as an option, but we are showing the obscured glass because it is a legitimate concern.
Okay. And the other is my job is to give you a chance to talk about the things you didn't talk about in your 10 minutes. And I want to talk very quickly about the parking structure, because that's something that comes up, these mechanical parking structures. If I understand correctly from the presentation, there are basically two things that a parking space does. One, it allows you to store the car, and the other is it allows you to get in and out of the car. And most of the parking spaces that were built when there was actual space to build them do both functions in the same place. That is to say, you park and then you get in and out at the same place. If I understand the system you're proposing, it divides those two functions into two parts. There's a storage place where it goes where you could not get in and out of the car, and then it brings the car up to a staging area, if you will, where it's possible to get in and out. Is that an accurate description of how that works?
It kind of. I wish I had the video at the ready. I could show you exactly how this particular system works. But if you have an opportunity, I'm trying to think if you could actually see this. There is one that exists at 4880 El Camino Real in Los Altos. It's the same system. It's a very elegant system. It provides security for each individual car. Each individual pulls in, they have a fob that opens a door that slides open, and the person drives into their designated space, and it's just like a regular parking space. The sleds that we are specifying on this project, I'm glad you asked this question, because we specified these in particular because they're the largest on the market, and they actually provide the 9x18 parking space that the city of Los Altos requires. And that's why we specified them. The waiver that we were asking for is only for the height of the sled. When the sled is in it basically lifts the car up to above grade, if you will, elevation. And when the car is up on that top spot, that's where it doesn't have 7 feet. Right. But what you do, you drive in on the on-grade level, you drive onto the platform, you literally have a 9x18 by 7 foot clear space to get in and out of your car.
Right, and then it's when it's being stored that you don't have the full 7-foot clearance.
That's it. Yeah, that's the only time, and you're never up there anyway. So
It shouldn't
it's
be.
kind of, just wanted to point that out, that
Mhm.
we've kind of gone to greater lengths to make sure that we've got a larger lift system there. The market is changing. There's actually one of the major puzzle lift manufacturers actually went bankrupt a year or so ago, probably due to COVID. And there's another one that's kind of picked up in their place, but Klaus is still going, and they have, again, the largest on the market. They're made in Germany.
And they may be cheaper now
I don't know.
because they want to sell them.
Maybe so. Again, they're made in Germany. They're really good systems, and they look really elegant from the parking area, because they've got all kinds of different finishes you can put on the doors, and so they secure the car. You can't get to the cars. It is also a protective mechanism, so someone doesn't go and fall into the pit, or some kids don't fall into the pit.
Right.
So it's a really great system. And we're also providing, if you notice, there's also backup power. There's a generator in the mechanical room. So if it rarely ever happens, but if something were to go wrong, obviously power can go down, and that's the whole purpose of that. But there's really they don't break down that frequently.
Mhm.
So they're really they have a maintenance agreement when they install them, and they come out and maintain them, and they rarely have any issues.
Right. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank
Could
you.
I ask one more question?
Of course.
Did you, for the architect, did you say that the first floor units are 3 feet above grade?
30 inches.
Okay, and is there any leeway in being able to reduce that to 10 inches or whatever? Just reduce it from that? Just
It's kind of a function of the garage and the vehicle ramp, if you think about it. So the deeper we push the finished floor on the first floor down, it would push the clearance that we need for the puzzle lift in the basement. It would push that further down, thereby increasing the slope of the ramp to get down. So we've kind of played a balancing act there, trying to make the ramp very, very not too steep. So when you're driving your 911 Porsche into the garage, you're not going to bottom it out.
or if I'm riding my bike down it, or I'm
Yeah.
be more concerned with riding my bike up it, because I don't have an electric bike, but maybe I'll have to buy one. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right, any other questions? All right, if not, then why don't we open up for public comment? It looks like, just based on the number of participants and the names, I'm comfortable giving everyone 3 minutes.
Sure. So at this time, if you're a member of the public and want to make a comment, if you can use the raise your hand feature or any other gesture, it'll just help us organize calling off members of the public. And then when I say your name, you can unmute yourself, and the chair has given you 3 minutes, and I will try to get that up on my screen momentarily while I'm doing some other stuff. Give me 1 sec here. Go. Sorry, I got to get my participant screen back. Okay, so excuse me. The first speaker that I see is Roberta.
Hi, can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, go ahead.
Oh, okay, thank you. So I do appreciate all the work that the architect has done, but my big concern is that the height limit 30 feet for commercial and 35 feet for residential. With the California density bonus law, that brings it up to 45 feet. And I'm very, very concerned that I think that 45 feet should be the height limit, period. The rooftop deck is an amenity, is probably very nice, but it's also unnecessary and does not, contribute to the housing. The downtown visioning was supposed to have more feet on the street. And if somebody can take an apartment, go to the roof deck, it does nothing to help the downtown vitality. So I really would appreciate, in one case you say, oh, we're not setting a precedent. In another case you say we are setting a precedent, but I see absolutely no reason for this roof deck at all to be included. My second problem is the planter wall along First Street. We all know along 101st Street, it is very, very difficult to walk on the sidewalk. Two people cannot walk next to each other or two bicycles or a baby carriage or two people in a wheelchair. That wall really needs to go because it really shoves people into a very, very small space. First Street is the narrowest street downtown, and we are creating a canyon effect. And we're ignoring all the recommendations made by the downtown limits that were adopted by the city council. And I'm sure the developers want to make as much money as they possibly can, but it's also the responsibility of the planning commission and the planning department to try to stay within the rules we have. People understand 45 feet is 45 feet. It's not 62 feet. And you can paint it a lighter color, but it's still there. And it's completely unnecessary. The rest of the design looks very lovely. And a lot of work went into it, but I think that, at some point we have to draw a line in the sand and say, these are the rules that we're playing by. And everybody moving forward should play by the rules. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker that I see on my screen, Dab Merji. You can unmute yourself, and you don't have to, but it would be helpful for our records if you can tell us your name.
Yeah, I'm Salim Damerty. I grew up in Los Altos. Now live in Mountain View. This is a great project. It's in a walkable neighborhood. It'll add more shoppers to help support local businesses downtown. It'll also add more life downtown. And for me, the most important part is that it'll play a small role in addressing the housing crisis locally. We need a lot more projects like this one to get to where we need to be. I do have one criticism of the project, which is the bike storage. It's like the longest route you could have and also has a blind turn. I really think you could do that better. But as staff noted, there are legal restraints on what the city can do with this project because it is consistent. I mean, this is from the staff report, quote, the development proposal is consistent with general plan and zoning ordinance, end quote. The Housing Accountability Act, that's section 65589.5 of Government Code, prohibits localities from denying housing development projects that are compliant with the locality's zoning ordinance or general plan at the time the application is deemed complete, unless the locality can make findings that the proposed housing development would be a threat to public health and safety. And there was a 2021 court case between Carla, that's the organization that sued Los Altos and won, versus San Mateo. And it found that the HOA disallows cities from denying projects on the basis of subjective standards. And this is the most important part. It also provides that if there's substantial evidence in the record that would allow a reasonable person to find a project compliant with objective standards, then the city can't deny it. I think this, I think this project complies with objective standards, and I can't imagine anyone saying that there is no reasonable person who could find that to be the case. This proposal to build 15 units is sorely needed in Los Altos. And because this proposal is zoning compliant and general plan compliant, the city has to approve this application. And like staff said, This means that approval can't be contingent on any changes, insofar as it does comply with our existing rules about what can get built. It has to get built. So I support this project, and I hope it gets built soon. I hope the bike storage maybe has a better location. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next speaker that I have on my screen with their hand raised, again, if you would like to speak, please either raise a hand, and then at the end, I'll just open up for somebody that doesn't have a hand or gesture raised. So the next person that I see is Janine Valadez. Janine?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. I'm a park commissioner, but I'm speaking as a member of the public tonight. I am in support in general of housing, increased housing in Los Altos, especially housing that increases equitability and a diversity of income levels in our city. I'm also listening very carefully to the criteria that Attorney Houston and others have mentioned about concessions, waivers, and reasons for denying things and reasons why things cannot be denied. And I think I'm getting a handle on it. I believe this development does a really good job of skirting, not skirting in a negative way, but staying within the guidelines and staying within, asking for waivers and concessions when they've earned it. So in general, I support it. I do believe that the e-bike situation needs to be improved. And maybe I'm not getting the numbers right. So if somebody could clarify the number of e-bike chargers and how many total e-bike spaces there will be, maybe I'm incorrect in my assertion that more work needs to be done there. I also wonder if a shadow study has been done. Not that it's necessary on first, but just to have the data if it's been done. And then I believe that the roof deck is an important amenity, not just because it's nice and fancy, but because it adds effective recreation space to our city. Even if it does belong for the use of the owners and their guests, it is in fact rest and relaxation and recreation space. Given that we have such limited park space, I think it's a critical amenity. I think the design has pulled it properly away from the edges of the building, and it'll give a place for people to go, for the residents to go and their guests. So I'm a big fan of roof decks. I just don't think down at the ground level you're going to be seeing that it's going to add height that people are worried about. And now to get to the height, I think we need to get realistic, and I'm speaking to my fellow residents. Housing resistant residents, they don't want housing near them in R1. Some of them don't want fourplexes, or they don't want two stories, or they don't want 3 stories. Well, then where is it supposed to go? I really think we all have to just understand that maybe First Street does need to be surrounded by taller buildings, and that way you don't have tall buildings near your single family home. I think that, 3, 4, 5 stories, if that's what it takes to get our housing element done, whether it's on El Camino, whether it's in the downtown area, I'm all for it. And we need to be realistic. It's either there or it's in amongst our homes. Make a choice. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I don't see any other hands at this time, but if any member of the public would like to unmute themselves and speak, you have the ability to do that. Chair Bodnar, I don't see anybody and I don't hear anybody at the moment.
Okay, so I'm going to open it up now for our planning commissioners to have a discussion. I don't see everybody, but let's see if everyone can turn their cameras back on. Great. Okay, let's open it up for discussion. I've got, there is right in the box below me, and then I'll work my way around.
Okay. So there's a lot. I'll start with the architecture first. I think that the design is an improvement from what you had at the study session. I still think that there's some things that could be improved. The building doesn't have a lot of articulation, which is fine, but I think that breaking up the mass is really important, especially on those corner volumes that go up from levels 2 to 4. I know that you had mentioned the peer review and the awnings, and you know, I understand where you're coming from, but I think that that strategy was more so to break up that large mass. And I think that we talk about the human scale a lot. And so I just think that there could be a better way of breaking it up, maybe not through awnings, maybe through a material break. But I think that there's a better strategy for breaking it up, because I'm concerned about the large kind of span that goes up. The south elevation, the stair tower has that gray paneling, but then right next to it, it has that, you know, white color. I think you could swap those so that the stair tower is white instead. I just think that the gray, even though it's a light gray, I think it's still going to weigh the building down. Or, you know, you could introduce a new material that's just for the stair tower, making it, you know, unique compared to the rest of the building. The elevator and the rooftop deck, I think, is obviously the biggest aspect of this. I'm still a little unclear about the height of the building and where we should be measuring it from. I think that, you know, to me, it makes most sense to measure the elevator from the flat portion of the roof. You know, you're showing it as almost 16 feet. I think Shelley had mentioned earlier that it's more like 14. Our code says 12. So there's something, you know, odd about how much we should allow. You know, I definitely don't want to do a ramp. I think that was a bad idea for 389. So I think it's possible to lower it, because I think that based on what we've been talking about, I think you could, but I don't know how significantly much you could lower it. Also, based on what I've been listening to and reading, it sounds like it's going to be more of a challenge to just flat out deny the rooftop deck and the elevator extension. I think you could make the case that it's not a necessary feature to execute this building, but I'm concerned that it's going to cause more of an issue if we were to deny it tonight. The height of the elevator element, I think, is just higher than what we're used to seeing. And so that, I think, is where the hesitancy comes. I personally don't mind setting a new precedent for height if it's for units or more housing. But I think, because I do think that 5 or 6 story buildings are eventually going to come to downtown. But I think that when it's just a single element that's just sticking out, I think that's the part that makes me a little bit hesitant to allow. You also haven't really designed the tower in a successful way. I think that, you know, the renderings show it as being very hidden, but it's going to look very large. I think that there could be a strategy where you could soften it up, whether it's with a different material or having the roof screen wall go in front of it, maybe moving the tower and swapping it with the stair tower so that it's more pushed towards Foothill Expressway. I just think that there's some things that could be done to soften it and make it, you know, not as prominent. So yeah, I think overall, I would definitely allow the concessions, because I think that affects the overall building. And the waivers, I think, make sense to me as well. It's just, you know, the rooftop deck and the elevator, you know, personally, I think you could handle it a little bit more delicately. But again, it sounds like it would be challenging to just deny it based on what we've been hearing from staff and from the city attorney. And also, this is just a side issue, but I think if tonight, if there are items that we really want to see done and they're contingent, I think that we should really make sure that we're specific, because 355 First Street basically just didn't listen to anything we said. So I think we really got to be intentional and say what we want done, so that we don't waste our time and we don't waste the developer's time. So I'll just say that to all the other commissioners, but that's it.
Okay, Richard.
Thank you. A number of points. We start with the rooftop deck. I think the amenities of fire pit, jacuzzi, barbecue island, dining area with the trellis covered pergola, the tables. You got trash bins up there, observation deck. All are really nice amenities, but they're going to cost money. They cost money to maintain. It's going to result in high HOA dues. Seems to me that we're dealing with, we have three moderate level incomes that qualify in here. They may not have the additional disposable income that they could to offset that. So, and the other thing on the rooftop deck, how high, no, I didn't see it. How high is the wooden fence or the wooden screen wall that goes around it? Second item was if you don't eliminate the rooftop deck, and you said earlier that the first floor is 30 inches above grade, why not drop the first floor to 12 inches above grade? And therefore it would bring the roof down, the height down 2 feet conceptually. Now I understand it would mean you'd have to have the basement go down lower. There'd be a steeper grade to the driveway and some other amenities. So that's there. Another item would be possibly change the rear setback from 12 feet to 10 feet. That gives you 2 more feet that you could have in the front yard, with the front landscaping and the sidewalk and the part of the Los Altos walking down the street. You'd have be much better. And I did take a look at the peer review information. I found that the horizontal siding added a significant amount of appeal to the overall building. Now that's not real, that's, everything's in the eye of the beholder. But they did have some good ideas, and the whole thing was to try and reduce the long, narrow columns that you get with the result of the gable roofs that go down all the way from the roof to the ground. And the horizontal siding seems to break that up. I wasn't in love with all of the windows, the more horizontal windows or vertical windows. I would like to see maybe them broke up a little bit. But other than that, I think the landscaping you did in the front with a limited amount of space is attractive. Somebody walking down the street, I think, would find it that way. I think that looks good. The balconies did a good job on something with and you've got some glass or wire. Things look good. So that's what I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Richard. Susan.
I am struggling with this one. And I understand the constraints we have vis-a-vis the concessions and what the limitations are there. But I think the building's just a little too high. Now I understand about thank you to the architect for explaining his 9-foot ceilings. I totally understand that. I'm not sure having the concession granted for the height actually helps in the affordability of the units. I never heard a compelling reason for that. But having said that, I kind of get it. But I think why I'm struggling with it is the corner, I think what Mayrose was saying about the corners and the elevator tower, it's just too big and bulky and too noticeable. And I would just urge the architect and the applicant to figure out how to reduce the mass of this building, because it's a tall, skinny building. And the way, to me, it's done, it just is accentuated by the finishes. And I too thought some of the peer review comments were useful, and I was kind of sad that they were just kind of dismissed. I don't know where we go from here. I'm not thrilled about the project. I'm not sure I want to approve it. I think it's almost there, but not quite there. And given that we don't have the 330 limitations, I'm sort of inclined, depending on what the other commissioners feel, to say, come back to us one more time before we move to council, because we have had the experience recently of an applicant just ignoring what we said. So I don't know what the best strategy is, but I would like to see some concrete changes just to kind of reduce it a little bit.
Eric?
Yeah, thank you. First of all, I want to endorse everything that Merus and Richard and Susan said. Generally, I think the building is extraordinarily vertical, and since it's so tall, there needs to be some further articulation to make it seem less bulky. I particularly like Merus's suggestion about what to do with the stairwell tower, because I think that the way that the siding has been put on this one looks like it just got slapped on sort of for no particular reason. My thought would be all or nothing in that case. I don't think that just putting it on the corner necessarily adds very much to the design, but lightening the color would certainly help. I do want to take on the rooftop thing, because it occurs to me, and Jolie, you might want to reach for strong drink at this point, that actually that could be denied. And I will tell you why, okay? The building to be built requires they build the 15 units, which is fine. That's well within the density in that area, that they're not asking for any bonus units. They're asking for the concessions and waivers. And the particular concession they want to do is to be able to basically convert the roof into common area, because in a building like this, there are two kinds of areas. There's the separate interests, which are the units, and then there's the common areas, which are out there, which means they have to have an elevator and a stairwell that will reach up to the roof, and they're ADA and all that kind of thing. I'm with Merus that basically the top of the building should be the roof deck, in other words, the 46 feet. I view the gables as primarily decorations, if you will. And to insist, and I appreciate Steve's concern about this, to insist that the midpoint of the gable is somehow the height of the roof, it seems to me is rather odd. Because the building is basically up to that roof deck. And it's possible, they've said, it's possible to build the entire thing within the envelope that they have designed. I do not see that turning the roof deck or turning the roof into common area and then doing something with it is going to make it more, is going to allow cost savings in building the 15 units. Nobody has connected those dots. So I think in those circumstances, there's no justification for doing it. It may be nice for marketing, but it doesn't really do anything. I'm also concerned about and here I will take off my commissioner's thing and to put on my HOA president's hat for just a minute. Having a pool of water on the roof is a recipe for disaster. It's going to leak eventually. It's going to be a problem. Water intrusion is the enemy of any multifamily development, period. And I think having that up there, I'm also worried about the barbecue pits and the other things. Having fire and water on the roof of a building is not a good idea. I appreciate the desire to make it as sort of party-like as possible. I also want to remind everybody, this is downtown. We want people to go downtown. We don't want people to sit on the roof of their building. We want them to go downtown. I'm in favor of making the roof not attractive. I'm in favor of getting people to go downtown. So I don't think that that's a particularly good idea from a policy point of view alone first, okay? That said, I don't see that this necessarily meets the requirements for the particular concession. They get the 11-foot extension, they get the 4th floor for free. That's an on-menu concession. That's fine, okay? That allows them to build the 15 units that they have to build in order to make the thing work. And I don't see that turning the roof into common area and then doing all these other things necessarily meets the requirements. So I don't think that this is something that we should necessarily rubber stamp. I share Susan's concern, I share Richard's concerns, and I share Merus's concerns. And I think that that's something that we need to consider. So, rant finished.
All right, Shelley?
Yeah, well, I thank you. I'd actually like to hear from our city attorney about what Eric just brought up. So, Jolie, could you comment on that?
Yes, I can comment that we have no evidence in the record that the concession is not necessary for the cost burden of the affordable units. I do know that in the letter from Cox Castle, they say that the concession results in improved architectural design and that the requested height exceeds the on-menu height concession, but critically, the height increase is necessary to reduce the cost burden of the affordable units on the project so that the project can attract commercially reasonable financing. An incentive to make the project as whole, including the affordable units, economically feasible, is well-established use of an incentive. A project with 8 market rate units and 3 affordable units, 37.5% affordable, would not be able to obtain commercially reasonable financing. The additional market rate units and improved architectural design that would result from the concession would also result in increased project revenue that would be used to subsidize the project's affordable units.
Yeah.
That is what we have in the record. We don't have, right now, we don't have anything that counters that.
So it's making the argument that other properties that have been approved in town enjoy these amenities, these concessions of rooftop living, and it would make this project less attractive to financing if it didn't have the same kind of amenity, because these are going to be, you know, high-end units and they wouldn't be comparable to the unit next door or across the street. So I now understand what Cox Castle said, and, you know, Eric, if you can appreciate how they're looking at the value of that. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I do want to say that I do know the applicant. I've known the applicant for many years. I've been a longtime patron of the restaurant, and I'm happy to see that he's been able to move this project along to bring it before us tonight. You know, I struggled, like Commissioner Menzinger, about the roof deck. I struggled with the height of the stairwell. I also was thinking, well, if it was a roof deck and it had these photovoltaic panels, you know, what's the trade-off between the height of the photovoltaic panels and the height of the elevator tower? So I can't find a basis to deny the rooftop deck. I think the applicant hurt himself a little bit by showing all these amenities of fire and water. They should have just shown a rooftop deck and kind of let it be. And listening to May Roos, it is true. I think we need to be very specific about what we expect of the applicant if we want this to, number one, come back to us, or number two, if we're going to send it forward to the council, we need to be specific about those changes that we'd like to see made. So with that being said, I agree with Commissioner Ahi's comments about the stair tower and about the elevator tower, about maybe flip-flopping the stair tower and the elevator tower, moving them more toward the back of the building. I know you have to have separation for fire, for exit, but I think they could soften the tower by use of materials. And I also believe that can be a softening of the building by use of materials in those large vertical expanses. The other comment is that I am still not understanding that 12 feet is actually the height of that elevator cab, and I would really like to pay specific attention and have the applicant actually have a cut sheet or something from the manufacturer to show that the head height of that elevator is actually 12 feet, because I do not believe that it is. So when it gets to the top of the roof, I believe you're going to have a 14-foot head height, and that's going to be an issue. So I would like to see that proven to us before the project or the stair tower or the elevator tower is approved. I believe the city has made a mistake in that ordinance in the past. Other than that, I don't find anything else that would tell me that I would not approve this project to move forward.
Thank you. Dave?
Thank you. I think that there's always this same concern that the buildings are too high and First Street's becoming cavernous. But I think that I appreciate that concern, but it doesn't feel like it would be. I don't think that that's going to be stopped, and so I think that there's this other part of me that hears that and thinks I wish they could make the ceilings 10 feet, because that would probably make these units nicer, and probably in 5 years that small difference isn't going to feel like a lot, because it seems like it keeps getting higher. So I see both sides of that, but it just seems like this is the way it's going. I think the building looks nice. I like what they've done in the front. I think adding the sidewalks, the landscaping, I like the balconies. So to me, it seems like a lovely building. The two things, I agree with what Eric said about the rooftop, in the sense that I don't really like a rooftop deck, and I don't know why we would be encouraging these buildings to have rooftop decks. It's not, I mean, in Manhattan, I see why that's a value, because it's harder to get outdoor space, but they're right across the street from a park. So I don't see why, it surprises me to learn that you can sell these things for more money with a rooftop deck when you're right across the street from Shoot Park and that whole area that's just outdoors anyway. But I can't, if that's what they say, it's what they say, but I don't really like it. And I do agree also, it just seems like it's going to cause more problems. I have a similar reaction to the parking issue, but I can't say I fully understand all the different mechanisms that people are using to try to accommodate this parking problem. But it just sounds to me like that it's gonna, one day you're gonna, in the near future, these mechanisms become like antiquated, and what you're left with is, they don't work that well. And so I find it to be sort of regretful that we are trying so hard to address the parking problem by doing something that probably will very quickly we'll look back at as being not a great fix. But having said that, I realize that the parking is endlessly a problem. But overall, again, I thought the building looks very nice. So I think as far as, if we're getting more buildings, this one looks good.
Could I make,
Sorry, Richard, did you want to say something?
I'm sorry, yes. I had looking for all my notes, and I had two more comments. How is the fire department going to get to the rooftop deck? We understand that they're going to put the ladders up to get to the third story, to get onto the deck, to get into a bedroom, to get into a unit. How are they going to get on with their ladders? Are they going to get all the way up to the top to get on the rooftop deck to put a fire out in the event of one? And the other thing that I forget to ask was, what about no guest parking? I've not heard anything about that. I know we've been talking, some of the other projects are not having little or none. Where are the people going to park? We know we've got all these beautiful buildings going up on First Street, and there's all their own parking. We have no garage. We have no city parking lots over there. Where are the guests going to come? And the people that have 2 cars or 3 cars and they only have 1 parking stall, where are the cars going to be parked at night? Where are they going to be parked for their guests? And that's all of my notes for sure. Thank you.
Chair Bodnar, could I make a couple more comments? And this is just general overall for my fellow commissioners. There's a couple of things I think that we should look at this year. And one is, I think we need to understand the mechanical parking systems better. So I'm suggesting that we take that on as a commission sometime this summer, because they are used universally in many projects, in many, high-rise story projects. So I think we need to have a study session or at least a presentation on those. And I also think we need to have more discussion about rooftop decks and about the construction of rooftop decks and about maybe even data on, you know, how they work, how they're built not to leak. So we can all kind of understand sort of construction practices when it comes to those, because I think that would help us in our comments to the applicants moving forward. Thank you.
Can I ask also a clarifying question of Jolie? You read the provision in there where one of their consultants said, yes, this helps us be affordable by having the increased height, the roof garden, et cetera. Yet there's no economic analysis really supporting that. Are they required or encouraged to actually just not make a conclusion, but to actually provide the background material saying, yes, this really does have an economic impact?
Well, what the statute says is we can require reasonable documentation. Our ordinance doesn't require something as detailed as a pro forma. But what they have said is based on their analysis that it was necessary. And right now we don't have anything that says it's not necessary. So, or we
don't see the analysis, correct? I mean, I don't recall seeing that in our package. I saw the conclusion.
Yes, you would have to, when they do the density bonus report, I think this is something that Laura or Steve could weigh in on, because this is the report that we require, and we don't require, as I said, a pro forma. I don't know if Steve or Laura, you can add to that what you seek from the applicant with our
I guess my question is, if that's something we should consider and also find out what the best practices are in other communities. Clearly, this is an issue throughout California.
Mm-hmm. Some cities require a pro forma, other cities don't, and I think it's really left up. I think the planners can say more about what they accept. I'm seeing not. I only know of a few cities that actually require a pro forma, but Steve or Laura would know more about that.
Not being in finance and just being a planner, I don't know. We would have to seek some more expertise with regards to, you know, those requirements. But that would be a future adjustment to our code, not what's before you tonight.
I understand that. It was more just getting clarification.
Okay. Yeah, and I think and Jolie can also comment on this, but it's also the city's burden to do the analysis. We can ask for quote unquote reasonable information, but it's the city's burden to take on that analysis of that. Jolie is correct, and I think it was just before my time with the city that a project did bring the city, I think, paid for a consultant, and that was brought to the city council. And I don't want to, it's not necessarily my opinion, but I believe the city council was not very accepting of that evaluation that the city maybe paid for. So that's just kind of a historical artifact. And
I would be curious in finding out best practices of other cities, but it's not relevant to this particular project.
And while I know why Commissioner Doran was talking about the lifts and some of those other, we can, you know, after you give some direction or make a motion, whatever you do, then I would suggest making maybe direction for staff to come back with looking at these other things.
Yeah, I would probably table this issue there's another item on the agenda called potential future agenda items, and I would just table this whole discussion.
Yeah.
Thanks.
And Ronit, can I say a couple of things? One, I'll answer Richard's question. The answer to your question is that under the density bonus law, the allowed parking ratio includes handicapped and visitor parking. So there's no provision for additional parking. It is in our code, but not in the density bonus law. So that's the way that is. Number two, I read that paragraph from I guess the attorney's letter is referring to the fourth floor and not necessarily to the rooftop deck itself. It's a very confused and confusing paragraph, and I don't think that it necessarily meets or it makes it impossible for us to argue otherwise. But that's something that Jolie and I can talk about off if we want. I read the paragraph differently. That's all I'll say. Okay, so that said, let's go forward.
Yeah,
Okay,
just to clarify Commissioner Steinle's statement with regards to parking, per the state density bonus law, they prioritize units over parking, and therefore they don't require any guest parking. I should say residential units. So the desire is, I think the intent is to provide more residential units and less of the parking for guests. So the developer is eligible for all of those reductions and elimination of guest parking. So I would kind of tread lightly on discussing that as part of a reason to deny the project.
Okay.
Can I add one thing, Renee?
Sure.
I apologize to stay on the mechanical parking, but I just want to make sure I'm clear. I mean, my opinion is that it quickly becomes a negative, that if you've ever had a mechanical parking spot, more often than not, you end up not liking it because it's inconvenient, and then you don't use it. And then you end up parking on the street anyway, because parking in the mechanical spot is annoying. And so that compounds the problem, because first we waste space and money building, forcing the applicant to build it, and then in any event people end up parking on the street because for getting in and out, those are not very convenient. So I appreciate that I don't have much expertise on the process, but I've had mechanical parking spots in New York, and I know that that's what happens, and it's just very annoying. And you don't use it. If you're there for 3 months, you'll park it there, but when you're coming in and out 3 times a day, it's often not practical. So that's my concern. I'm not blaming the applicant. I think they're doing what they can to get the permit, but there's just something in my opinion impractical that we're making people do this, and I don't know that it's very user friendly. So I just wanted to be clear, that's my concern with it, but thank you.
And if I can just add to what Dave said very quickly, from my own experience, if it can break down, it will, and it will at a 3-day weekend. And gates, I mean, we're right now fixing our gate for the 17th time. I think gates are important, and a mechanical lift system could have this. I mean, it's going to happen. It's just a question of when and how frequently. So that is a consideration.
Okay, so I'll try to be brief. There were a few places in the material where this project was compared height-wise to the other projects on First Street that I found was particularly helpful. One of them I'm looking at right now is attachment G. And I had kind of 2 thoughts as I was observing this. And also Steve highlighted all the projects that have been approved. And I will say, I actually got excited for the first time in a long time when I saw all of these projects, because I could really see, at least on First Street, that vitality and energy and people are coming. These projects that have been approved or under construction or have just been completed are, I think, going to really change the feeling of our town. And for that, that is a vision for the downtown that I endorse. And so I was pleasantly surprised to see that. But when I looked at the actual heights, I was really struggling to see dramatic differences. And I do think that when you are walking the expanse of this, what will be this really new street with a lot of new construction, I don't think that a few feet here and there on this building is really going to stand out. I really don't. And, when I joined Planning Commission 8 years ago, I remember the one question I was asked when I was applying was, I remember one of the questions I was asked, and it was, how do you feel about 3-story buildings? Because at the time, we only wanted or had 2-story buildings, and 3 made sent people nuclear. And at the time, I feel the same way now, is that it really depends on mass and detail and context. And I wasn't on principle against any number. And then over the years, we started talking about, as 3-story buildings started coming, like what's the height? And there was a whole discussion, Eric, around how do you measure roofs, and like coming up with that midpoint. I agree that it's hard to kind of wrap your head around. And like there was a lot of discussion, there's best practice, and that's how you measure it. And then by contrast, there were all these like 2-story buildings. They'd put like a condenser on their building, and they'd put other things, and then they'd build a whole thing around it. And that wasn't counted as part. I mean, buildings that exist that are 2 stories have these huge contraptions on top of them. And then we wanted them to camouflage it, so they block it. And so like they actually created a ton more height off their roofs. And so I just see that, like in my mind, it's not about feet anymore, it's about floors. So I'm comfortable with 4 stories. And like that took, we went from 2 to 4 in the last 8 years, and we're gonna go in the next 8 years from 4 to 6. That's how I think, that's the direction that we are going. All signs point to that, based on like everything the state says. So it doesn't make sense to me for us to try to engineer this down 5 feet by making really unrealistic expectations about an elevator shaft. And I think our code doesn't allow. I mean, it isn't realistic with the design of how elevators are. So I don't see the elevator shaft as a big issue. Also, I feel like it's not like they expanded the whole length of the building to match that height. It's really like a portion, and proportionally, it's a small portion in my mind. And so when you look at the like the stretch of buildings coming, it doesn't bother me. And I like the design of this building. I think I appreciated all the changes that they made to some of our concerns, and moving the building entrance and the window details, the fenestration. I like the colors. I like that they've added some landscaping. A couple of the letters we received were like, we should bump people out, but we have a new, like this, all the other buildings are at the same line. So there is, it's I think, better pedestrian experience if we are consistent. So I wouldn't make that, I wouldn't require that change. And then when it comes to like the concessions and the waivers, as I read it, these are done deals. And I can't imagine a scenario where we would want to challenge any of them, and the effort and time and expense that would go into it. I mean, we've done that. There's case law specifically on a couple of these that are, suggest that we would lose. And I just don't think it makes any sense. And also, the times that we have done it, we have, and then been challenged, we have not succeeded. And so I always wonder, like, the people who push that idea forward, whether, on our commission or on city council, they're not there when we lose those cases. They're long gone by the time that happens, and the city's left like paying the legal bills of the developer. So I wish I wish that weren't the case, but it often is. And so, I mean, looking at the design, I feel like I do think, like Roberta said, it's lovely. And so the little tweaks I could, get behind, but like dramatic changes to accomplish a few feet reduction doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I think an elevator should be in the front of the building, not in the back. And in terms of the roof deck, I think one of the feedback that we gave them like 2 years ago was that we wanted them to kind of put it more in the center, right? So that the impact, I mean, impact in terms of sound or noise would be diluted because it was really in the center of the top of a building. And I think they did that. And I think those features are desirable. You know, if I were in the building, I would want them. I get it that they're hard to maintain, and that's, you know, but yeah, people do it. So like, this is not the first building with a roof deck in Los Altos. So I feel like that ship has also sailed, whether we are going to encourage them or not. They exist. So it's, in my mind, also not something we send them back to change. So that's where I'm at. I'm interested in hearing where we think that there's consensus on particular changes, if there is consensus on particular changes. Does anyone have something that they want to put forward as a as feedback of a change that they'd like to see the developer come back to us with? Or
sounded to me like the changes were very minor and that we wouldn't have to have the applicant come back to us. Anybody's thoughts? That's what I'm hearing, is that if we did have some minor comments, that staff could be sure as it gets resubmitted and goes to council that those minor changes would be met. I think it's hard to have them try and come back to us. I just think it's unnecessary.
Yeah, I think that there are some ways specifically outlined in the peer review that are techniques that could soften the mass. And I think that even with the elevator tower and the stair tower, you know, whether it's with materials or whether it's with, you know, whatever they decide to do, I think there's ways to kind of soften it and look at that. As far as denying the rooftop deck and the elevator extension, I think as a commission, I think back at 389 First Street, where as a commission, we kind of recommended it and let the council kind of take a closer look at that. So I think that I would be fine with recommending that to council because I agree with Ronit that it's something that we've seen. It would be odd for us to deny that tonight. But I do think that there are some techniques that could be done that can soften the mass. And I'm hoping, crossing my fingers, that the architect agrees and maybe can execute them. I would hate to recommend it and have the same building be presented to council, but I guess, you know, if other commissioners agree with me, that could be something that we recommend.
I think if we're going to come up with some ideas, I'd like to see concrete suggestions and not just, well, that we'd like to have them soften a little bit or do this. I think in too many cases, things I've read in the past is that we'll just have them soften or have them do this, that, and then the time we got to council, there was little or nothing done. So I'd like to see specific items in the proposal to the architect.
Richard, do you have anything in particular that you'd like to be specific about?
Well, yes, eliminate the rooftop deck for fire and safety. I think that's a good enough reason to start right there. Fire, number one, because of the fire pit. Two, the jacuzzi and the water, the increased, it's ungreen. A little humor there, but seriously, and then fire, how are you going to get up there to take care of it? But from what I hear everybody say, that's not going to happen. I wonder, can we push the building back a couple of feet? The little idea, I think I read it somewhere, push it back a couple of feet and give you more in the front yard. Maybe that doesn't, front landscaping, maybe that's not attractive to everybody. I certainly like the change of the siding by peer review, but that's a personal thing, and I'm not going to, expect you to go along with my personal opinions. Just trying to think what else. Again, the rooftop deck the homeowner associations, they're going to spend, the developer's going to spend a few bucks putting in a jacuzzi and the outside kitchen, exterior kitchen. But those things take maintenance. Somebody's got to check the jacuzzi on a regular basis. Somebody has to, again, they're going to have a water usage up there for it. Those things all contribute to high homeowners dues. There's lots of apartment complexes in Mountain View, Palo Alto, where they've eliminated their swimming pool because of the dues, the safety, the insurance, and also because they found of the number of people that lived in the project, a very small percentage used it. So maybe there's 25% of the people in this building that are going to use the upper amenities, and the rest are paying for it. But again, with the moderate income level, I would be more concerned that they would not have the additional disposable income. They may well have it, but now they're going to be forced to spending it on things that they may or may not use. But specific things, sorry.
Okay, so okay, let me try to what I hear you saying. In terms of the homeowner dues, like unless you're suggesting that we put a cap on what they can charge, people who buy into this project will know their costs, and they can determine if they want to buy into a building with a roof deck or not buy into a building with a roof deck and high homeowners associations. So I don't know where to go with that suggestion. But in terms of the substantive changes related to removing the roof deck, I haven't heard consensus that there is movement or commissioners that want to go against case law precedent and the advice we've gotten from our attorney.
Well, we could ask make a request of the developer to consider whether that is something that he would want to do in the circumstances. It would also solve the elevator and stair problem if there's no deck up there, there's no reason for people to go up there. Therefore, all of that doesn't have to be built up there, and it's a more coherent design, because right now you have the gables and you have these things sticking up, and it's a relatively incoherent design. I think it would improve the building, which I also like, by the way. I didn't want to suggest that I didn't like the building. It would be a more coherent and more attractive design, and it would accommodate the 15 units comfortably. To have that. So that's a request we could make for them to consider. I don't think that under the circumstances, I'm not even sure that this commission would necessarily deny the roof deck. That would be something for the council to do. But we could request that the developer consider that as a possibility, and then it would come before the council. So that's
okay. So let me just take a straw poll of people who want to invite the developer, if I understand this correctly, invite the developer to consider not doing a roof deck.
Right. Basically, yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Straw poll of folks who would like to do that. Okay, I see 2, 3. Okay, so I do not see Mayru, Susan, or Shelley raising their hands. And I think that is, first of all, you just invited them. You just said it over this. So it's no different than if we invite them to do it in our minutes. All right, so that didn't seem to go forward. Pushing the building back or changing the siding, those are very different. Changing the siding is like it is really a stylistic design recommendation. So I only take these as 2 separate. Pushing the building back is redesigning the whole building. And I imagine that we would have, that feels like something that we'd have to show that it had like a real adverse impact on health and safety to make that kind of recommendation. Jolie, you can correct me if I'm not.
I think you're right on that.
Chair Bodnar, if I can interject, because I don't hear, this is part of your deliberations and I don't hear a motion quite yet. I guess I would offer one item, which is we actually didn't offer the applicant an additional 5 minutes to rebut any sort of public comments. I know we're a little bit out of order in the meeting, but also given the deliberations and maybe some of the struggling that you're having, maybe the architect can come back and offer some just things that they're willing to do outright. And maybe that would help you along in your motion process.
Okay, let's put a pin in our discussions and give them the 5 minutes to rebut now.
And they could maybe use that 5 minutes to
Address
make some
all the
other
issues they've heard.
suggestions. Yeah, so I can put up 5 minutes while this meeting.
It could be a sloppy 5 minutes too.
Jean, are you there?
Yes.
Okay. So the miracle of technology, we've been texting as you've been discussing. I did want to highlight a couple of different things. When we had our initial meeting and we talked about roof height, just to clarify, we had always intended that the top of the roof, flat roof, be the building height and be on menu. We wanted to comply with that. The pitched roofs were specifically designed, and we had this discussion back when Phoebe was still on the planning commission, and she saw the logic in that those pitched roofs were going to be mechanical screens. They're actually going to screen the condensers on the roof. If it was a flat roof and we were measuring to a flat roof with parapet walls, you'd probably want to see some mechanical screens. And so this was kind of a clever way to disguise some of that. So I wanted to point that out. The second thing is, John can comment, the jacuzzi was an idea that he had. He really wanted to have something special up there. And to be honest, my initial reaction was, wow, okay, well, it's been done before. You waterproof a roof. You're gonna have roof drains up there. I'm positive that we could design it in such a way that there would not be a potential water damage problem. And obviously we've got to design it for seismic and all of that. It can be done. Obviously it's less expensive to not do one. And I think Jean would be willing to I don't want to speak out of turn, but I think he'd be willing to lose that component of the roof deck. There's an old song that James Taylor used to sing. It was a remake of Up on the Roof. I love that song. I love the opportunity to go up on a roof. I think people will use the roof deck, maybe not as often as they think they will. But I think it's not going to turn people from going downtown and patronizing the businesses. I think it's also a place where they can go down, get something to eat, and take it up on the roof and enjoy the views and the fresh air up on top. These urban buildings like this, they don't have the open space. And I understand what Commissioner Merrick was saying. You can walk somewhere else and get to a park, and that's true. And I'm sure you could do that in New York as well. But there is something nice about being able to just go up on the roof. My partner in the company at Dolan Group, he and his wife have a roof terrace on their building, and they love going up there and using those amenities. They love it. Love taking guests up there and just enjoying something. Hey, you want to go up on the roof? So people like it. It's something that people look forward to using, and we would really like to offer that to the residents. And as far as how to treat the stair tower on the south facade, we've studied that many different ways. Commissioner Ahi's comments, I'm totally open to hearing what his ideas are. He sounds like a designer at heart, probably profession. I'd love to hear what he would propose doing differently on that, and also on the elevator tower itself on the roof deck. I'm open to ideas. I'm not a Frank Lloyd Wright, my way or the highway type architect. So I'd love to hear ideas of how you think the elevator tower could be softened in the middle of the roof deck so that that amenity can be provided. I would say that to flip it or try to get the elevator closer to the expressway side of the building is a little bit tough with, the entrance and keeping it close to the lobby and away from the residential entry point. So, we've studied that as well. It affects, this is quite a puzzle, this building, and it would affect that. So, Jean was texting me earlier that if the roof terrace were to go, and it was something that you just could not accept, he would like to go with a higher plate height on the units to compensate for that. He'd like to compensate for that and do like a 10-foot plate so that the units are actually taller in ceiling height. So as an alternative. Sean, did you want to add anything to what I said?
I'd like to add, as a restaurateur for 45 years, yes, I mean, we are 1 block from downtown. The rooftop not gonna keep the people away from rooftop because people sometimes wanna be a privacy. So as you guys know, I don't know if this study or not about, the younger generation, 40%, they don't go downtown. They order online. So when they order online, they don't wanna sit in their room. They wanna go someplace, relax, enjoy the moment. The second thing, the reason I put those expats on the roof, I mean, I'm a restaurateur, I serve 100 people every day. People make comment about where they wanna live, how they wanna live. So 80% of the people, they love to see a rooftop in Los Altos because it gives them some privacy. I mean, you can go lunch downtown, but dinner stay home, or breakfast go. I mean, it's your option, like kind of your option give you a privacy to stay with your loved one, to stay with your friend, stay with your guest. It just extra option give you a little more option for your right of privacy. So that was the reason I came up with this idea. That's how I think.
And we're just over 5 minutes, so
Okay, so it sounded
that was great.
to me like the architect is open to ideas to softening the elevator tower. So if anyone wants to suggest some particular ideas, that would be helpful.
Ronit, can I ask one clarifying question based
Sure.
on what they said? And this is for Brett. If the plate heights were raised to 10 feet, that would basically add another 4 feet to the height of the building from the 46.
Yeah, we would be trading height for height.
Yeah, no, we could go to 50 feet basically instead of the 45 or 46 or whatever it's at. Is that right? Math isn't my strong suit, so.
4 times 12, yeah.
Yeah.
An extra
Okay.
4 feet.
Yeah, okay. All right, thank you.
But, again, like John said, he'd really prefer the terrace with
I
the lower.
understand. I just want to get the relative. Yeah, that's fine.
By the
Yeah.
way, I don't know, I don't want to derail the conversation that we've had, but I did find a video that shows the puzzle lift. If you'd like to see how that works, I can show you on a screen. If you just let me know, otherwise you could do it on your, on your own time, but.
Does anyone feel like they need to see how that works?
I think we might have seen it in the past.
Yeah,
Can you
maybe you can just share it with Steve. He'll forward it to us. at
Yeah,
another
if you
time.
want to share the link, I can.
Watch it.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Sorry, back to the suggestion of ideas, creative ideas for softening the tower element or other aspects of it, of the design that are shy of, I think, didn't hear. I was just about to ask about pushing the building back. Is there any
I don't think
consensus?
that's a possibility. I think
Yeah,
you're right.
okay.
Yeah.
I wanted to make sure that we all were on the same page on that.
Right.
Oh, sorry.
Could I just add something with the sliding of the building back?
Mhm.
It is true that it's 12 feet from the property line at the ground floor, but it's 10 feet from the property line on the upper floor. So we've got a 2-foot overhang for, to articulate the west facade. So if we pushed it back, we'd have the same problem with setbacks just on the backside. Does that make sense?
Okay, all right, thank you. All right, I'm gonna suggest that we move into discussion exclusively with the planning commissioners as opposed to conversation in addition with the applicant. This is kind of unusual. Usually we close off that, and it was my bad that I didn't give the applicant an opportunity to rebut, but this part isn't intended to be a conversation. So it's intended to be a conversation with us. So why don't we go back to suggestions or ideas related to softening the building?
Sure. I was just gonna mention that, you know, the buildings that we've looked at and approved, they typically have a break of some sort. It's not just like a continuous span from the bottom to the third floor or the fourth floor. And so when you look at the front elevation, those two side corners, it goes from 11 feet to the top of the gable, which is 51. And there's that span. Obviously there's windows, but there's that large span. And so I think that there's a way, whether it's with having the floor 2 and 3 a different material than level 4, or if it's with an awning, or with some break, I think that would really help kind of add a human scale to the mass, because I think those elements kind of exaggerate the height. And so I think there are some strategies that maybe aren't awnings if the architect doesn't, you know, want to pursue that route. I think as far as the elevator tower, I think, again, you have that wooden screen that is kind of right next to it, and then it breaks, and then it starts again on the other side. And, you know, if something like that were to continue, then it wouldn't be the entire 16, 17 feet of the elevator tower. I think having something that breaks it in half, I just think might visually make it kind of less prominent and a little bit better. So those, I think, are some strategies that could be done to kind of just break it up as you're visually traveling, you know, from the bottom to the top of the building. And so I think that could be done. I think that could be executed. And I don't think it would significantly change the building. I don't think we should change the building significantly. I do think the rooftop deck should go to council, and they can kind of decide what they want to do with that. But I do think there are strategies that haven't been fully explored yet that could be looked at, whether it's introducing a new material to the mix and having that be implemented on the stair towers and elevator towers, a break in the massing, just something that I think could help. So I don't know if that was enough info.
Anyone else have some thoughts on that?
No, I'm just wondering, so if that's a comment, do we note that as a specific, do we vote on that specific comment to move this forward, or where do we go from here, Chairperson Bodnar? Yeah.
Look, my thought is that we note it, because I feel like having them come back 2 or 4 weeks with some iterations that do this, that we may or may not then like,
Right.
but then still have to then get approved by city council. And but if they don't like it, if the applicant doesn't like it and wants to commit to the original design and get that voted on by city council, then
Yep.
they have that prerogative.
Right. So we could effectively.
Jolie or Steve, do you want to give advice? I don't know. I recognize, though, that then if they don't do anything, we feel like we haven't been heard.
Yeah, I would say that somebody can offer a motion, either including Commissioner Ahi's recommendations, including others. There can be friendly amendments to either include more by other commissioners or remove certain specifics of what's on the table. I would say, and I don't want to necessarily sway how you would go either way. We will be talking later on under potential future item agendas. You do have some pretty full agendas coming forward, including study sessions. So the project coming back, just depends on the changes being proposed and also what else is on the pending agenda list. We usually prioritize continued items, but there are some other time-sensitive items coming forward too. And then I would defer to Jolie if she has anything else.
No, I was just going to say, make sure that you're specific with your direction, and if you want to have the council look into the rooftop, but I don't think there was consensus there.
Yeah. So, Jolie, if they look into the rooftop, that means that they're looking into the rooftop for all the projects that are going to be coming forward, who want that amenity underneath the concessions. Is that a true statement?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, it would be depending on which project. I know they're looking at rooftops on a lot of projects right now, and the rooftop was not concession, it was the height.
The height.
Yeah. So, and then one thing, you know, you can have them look at. I think rooftop amenities are going to be something the council's going to be looking at more and more. So, if you want,
I think the difficult thing too is that there's no objective standards, or I'd have to I'm not aware with the new design controls whether or not specific amenities were addressed and how design of the rooftop was addressed.
I
But
think
that,
generally the answer to that is not at all. So,
yeah, I think that I couldn't recall specifics, but so that could be something to look at as a future objective standard. But you know, this would not necessarily set a precedence, but of course there's always the comparisons to other projects. So.
Right.
Well, we do have one objective standard here, which is a height of 35 feet. I mean, we start there. So the question is whether there will be an exception to that in that way. So I mean, there is something there. So we start there. Okay.
Okay.
You beat this to death here. Yeah. Well, you know, I honestly feel at this point I could make a motion that we could move this forward to council, having the architect take into consideration some of the design recommendations of softening the Balkan mass that May-Roos brought forward. And I don't know, Steve, do we restate that, or that's in the minutes? And that we take a vote to approve this project.
Okay. Do we have a second?
So so far I heard specifically from Commissioner Ahi was, and I'll just read my notes, is provide a horizontal break from, I just said, the second story finished floor to the roof, kind of similar horizontal break at the stair tower. And then he had a comment with regards to visually breaking up the elevator overrun at the roof deck area. Those are the two things that I heard.
Yeah, I think that, you know, with the use of materiality and architectural accents, I think that there could be a way to at least attempt to try to see if there's a way to soften the mass. I think that by doing that, I think it would make the entire building just not look as kind of massive. And so just some good faith attempt, I think would be great to see when it goes to council.
And it goes in the report, staff report, that goes to council.
Yeah, so the third thing that I just wrote was add different exterior materials to soften and break up the vertical massing.
Do we have, it sounds like at least 2 people are supportive of that. Are others as well?
Yeah.
3,
Yeah.
4. Great. Okay. Did we get a second? Shelley made the motion.
Okay.
Just a clarification on the motion. It's a motion to recommend approval, not a motion to approve. Because you're
Oh,
recommending.
correct, sorry, yes, yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. A second on that motion?
Second.
All in favor? Do you want to take roll call, Steve?
Sure. Give me 1 second here. I'm just trying to make sure I've got my notes, just in case the video fails. Okay. Let me call it out. Commissioner Steinle,
Reluctantly, yes.
Commissioner Roche,
Yes, and I commend Mayrus on his ideas. I think that really, it was good. I was going to say something earlier.
Commissioner Menzinger,
Yes.
Commissioner Ahi,
Yes.
Vice Chair Duran.
Yes,
Oh, sorry, Commissioner Merrick.
Oh.
Sorry, I didn't get that, Commissioner Merrick.
Can you
I'm
hear me?
not hearing.
yeah. You're muted, but we read your lips.
Was that a yes? I see a thumbs up, so a yes. Okay.
Let's have a vote on what his lips said.
I see a yes for
Yes.
Commissioner
He
Merrick.
said yes, yeah.
Got it.
Sorry.
And Chair Bodnar.
Yes. Though I'm not sure. Yes. I'm not sure how I feel about breaking up the look of the lines. But that will be up for City Council to value if they elect to do it.
Right.
So yes.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Is that matter behind us? Yes. Okay.
It is.
All right. So why don't we go back to the first item on the calendar, which was election of chair and vice chair.
Sure.
Go ahead.
I'll just provide the background. You heard it at the last meeting. I just also want to note it's 9:43 on my clock. I presume you probably just want to press forward instead of taking a break.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So what the commission heard last week, minus Vice Chair Doran, I think everybody else was present, was that we're a little bit out of sync with the commission's handbook for this commission when the chair and vice chair are supposed to be elected. That was kind of unfortunate. So at this time, the recommendation from the city is to elect a chair and vice chair. It could be a continuation, doesn't necessarily have to change. There will be another election in October per the handbook. So it would be from this period forward to October. At that point, there would be another election and same rules that doesn't have to necessarily change. So there is either, as a result, going to be a shortened chair position moving forward to October, or an elongated one way or another. So that's what it'd be. At this point, there would be motions for a chair and a vice chair, and then a vote for both. Historically, the vice chair usually is motioned to become chair, but that doesn't have to be the case. Just wanted to provide some perspective.
Yeah, thank you for that background. And, this has been my second term as chair, and I think you got to know when to hold them and know when to fold them, and always leave them wanting more. So I am comfortable, and I would like to nominate the Vice Chair, Shelley, to be the chair going forward. If she's open to accepting it, then is there a second?
Yeah,
I'll second.
great.
Great. Thank you, Mayrus. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. And
I won't call it out, but just because I don't think it's necessary. I heard everybody saying aye, so that would be approved.
Shelley, would you like to nominate anyone for vice chair?
Sure. I'd like to nominate Commissioner Menzinger for vice chair, if she would, everyone would accept that, please.
I'll second that.
You have to call for the vote.
Oh, yeah.
Let's vote. I don't know if you're leading or I'm leading still.
Oh, go ahead. You can finish it.
Yeah, we'll
Finish
finish
it
it
up.
off.
While we vote. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Awesome.
Great.
We have a great new dynamic duo.
Have a May-October romance here, March-October romance.
Just for the record, so I heard Commissioner, the new chair, Doran, make the motion for the vice chair. And who seconded that one?
I did.
I'm sorry, I missed that. Chair.
Bernie,
Bob,
I
okay,
did.
Thank you.
I am now handing the virtual gavel over to you.
Got the gavel virtually. I don't have the agenda in front of me anymore.
The last thing on the agenda was to go over any potential future agenda items, commissioner reports and comments.
Sure. Are there any reports from any of the committees that any of the commissioners want to make and or future agenda items?
I briefly talked about this earlier, but the 355 First Street project was really disappointing to see that they literally just submitted the same PDF to the council. Obviously, it's a very specific situation with the objective standards, and it's a SB 330 project. But I think that, we did do this a couple of years ago. I remember that we tried to be more intentional with the comments. But I think that if there is something that we all collectively agree on, I think that it's a good practice moving forward to really say it in the report. So there's no confusion or anything. But that was all I wanted to mention.
Great. I agree. Yeah, I agree. Okay.
Shelley, you had a couple of things, right?
Yeah, and again, we can just talk about these at a later time. Just, I heard Commissioner Merrick talk about the merits or non-merits of using the lifts, and would really like us all to sort of see the same thing. And, in all practicality, I've not used one every day. And if he has, I would just love to hear about it, because we're going to see these more and more. And, what's the option? Is the option having a, below grade, 3-story below grade garage to meet the parking burden, or lifts? But we'd like to get that on the table, and then talk about rooftop decks and construction of rooftop decks. And the building industry is kind of not the villains, but understand what it takes to actually have a well-functioning rooftop deck. I know that Commissioner Steinle has seen the worst of the decks, but there are the good stories too. So just something for future when we have time. It's going to be busy. It's going to be a busy spring, so maybe sometime in the summer.
I would endorse that. I think we have to have a certain number of people in favor of it, because it will involve some staff time. So I would certainly endorse both of those.
Sure. That's it.
Can I ask a question? Is there any way we can discuss and where do we go with this off-street parking with no guest parking? And even the complexes that have got the parking, it's probably in all likelihood not adequate. Where are the people going to park, given the limitations on parking downtown and the increased number of units? It's just, somebody proposes a parking garage. I just, where are we going? I'm really concerned about this. I don't live downtown, but I know that we're going to see more and more demands on the space. But most of the parking is within a couple of blocks of here, of these complexes. So it's just to throw it out for discussion. It'd be nice to sit down and chat and figure out what all our ideas are.
Okay, that on the bucket list. Anything else? Yes. Jolie, I see your hand up.
I may be wrong, but I thought a few years ago, Ronit, you might remember, didn't the Planning Commission do a field trip, or wasn't there discussion about a field trip to go? Was it one of the projects where you were invited to go to do
See a lift?
something, see lifts in action? And
Yeah, we did.
know-
We went to Palo Alto and we saw a lift. I mean, it was in a like a 2-story location. I mean, it would be interesting to go to, one of these ones on El Camino. Maybe if we can get access to sort of witness it and, hear from someone who's using it.
Does anybody know anybody that lives in 4880?
Oh.
I was curious.
Yeah. No, I was just going to say, if we bring this back for a discussion, the Planning Commission you can't take field trips under the Brown Act. We just have to notice it, and you can't take field trips. So just throwing that out there.
Right.
Mhm.
I mean, it might be worth having a few people speak to it too. You can see it on a video these days, but actually hearing how it's how it's working would be interesting.
Right. And what do you do with your groceries?
Because I remember that was very controversial in that building too. Like, that is it going to work? What happens when the power goes out?
Yeah. If there's any other items?
Well, as far as the next item would be the future agenda items, I'll just briefly touch on some. I did want to mention that I did send out, several emails with regards to meeting polls for start times earlier than 7 o'clock. We have a lot of, you got a reprieve. I think you had a lot of cancellations in the last year for Planning Commission, but it's going to start ramping up with more study sessions. So I'll send out, I'll send out a summary of those dates. I will be using more of those meeting polls. So check your city emails or email accounts. It's just the easiest way, and hopefully it was intuitive in what you do, is just the easiest way to keep that organized, and having hundreds of emails a day, not having to organize another email list of sorts. So there was a request for March 16th for this commission to join the Design Review Commission, and that is at the request of the City Council to better understand and provide feedback for SB9 related projects. Those are the newest kind of housing types that the city has gifted us. So that, I believe I have confirmed a quorum for both commissions for March 16th, and that's a Wednesday, and that would start at 6 o'clock, and it would only be for an hour because we need to start that meeting, the Design Review Commission meeting, at 7 o'clock. I don't know, Jolie, if you wanted to just say anything about the other meeting that you scheduled or not.
No,
Okay. Okay.
Need to talk to Ronit now, though.
Sorry.
Ronit and I can talk offline.
Okay. And just the next meeting for this commission, March 3rd, you're going to see another preliminary project review at 14 4th Street. There will be a subdivision, a 2-lot subdivision on 705 Vista Grande Avenue. Hopefully I'll have the annual housing report, or sorry, the annual housing element report kind of completed for this commission. And then March 17th, another preliminary project review. They're coming in. 996 Lorraine Avenue, that's in Loyola Corners. The project at 4350 El Camino Real, which is a multifamily project for 45 condominium units. And you'll get an update for the housing element, or a housing element update report. And I won't go further from there, but I'll send out a summary for those other meetings that that we requested your presence at.
This makes up for all the meetings we didn't have this year, so last year.
It surely does. So we'll have to note the requests that you just made for those more kind of, maybe call them study sessions, but you will just have to see how that fits in with everything else going on.
Sure.
Also, March 1st is the consultants are having another one of these community meetings on the housing update, and that is informative to hear what people are talking about, if nothing else. So if anybody's interested, I think that's still set for the 1st of March.
Yeah, I know that I would check out the housing element update website. I know there's a number of things moving forward with regards to that. More community requesting community feedback on, I believe the next step is housing sites inventory.
Right. So at least you hear what people are talking about. So we have a better idea of that. So
that's all I have.
Okay, on that note, there's not anything else. Will somebody call for an adjournment?
I'll move to adjourn.
Second.
Great.
It's
Wow, thank you.
9:58 and it looks like you're adjourned.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.